Welcome back, everybody, to the Enemy's Perspective, a UteNation podcast, where today we're discussing the final regular season game of the 2025 season, Utah at Kansas. Today's guest is Sam Winton, staff writer at the JayhawkSlant. Sam, I know things are busy right now with football and basketball season overlapping, but thank you so much for taking the time to talk some football with us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
The pleasure is all ours. So Kansas State 5-6 right now. Started off pretty hot. And correct me if I'm wrong. They even hit the top 25 rankings for a second there. At least for
I
the
don't.
league.
No, they never
No.
got into the rankings this year because
Um,
that Missouri loss early kind of hampered any early season momentum. But yeah.
at the beginning of the season, they were looking pretty hot. Some
Mhm.
dominant wins. But things tapered off. They're 3-5 in the conference, 5-6 overall. So how does the current season results? We're almost at the end. How does that compare with what the preseason expectations were around Kansas?
Yeah, I think everyone kind of expected this to be a bowl team for Kansas last year. It was disappointing not making that bowl game. They had the three ranked wins to end the year. They lose a blowout to Baylor. Come back this year with a lot of transfer portal talent. Everyone thought, okay, this team can get back to a bowl game. Right now they're right on the brink of it. They've lost some close games, which has plagued them in the past, and then kind of gotten their teeth kicked in on a couple occasions too. So I think overall it's kind of looked at as a disappointment. But if they could come out, get an upset against Utah, and get that sixth win, I think it'd be really important for the program.
Yeah, and I personally, I mean, I haven't been following the Big 12 as religiously as I do now for a long time, but I view Kansas as kind of that chaos team who seems to lose more games than what they should, but just has that upset potential. And it's kind of scary from a Utah perspective. So let's talk a little bit about Kansas. First of all, I want to talk about Jalen Daniels.
Hmm.
I think he's a really exciting quarterback to watch. He has 2,344 passing yards on the season, 21 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions, and 370 rushing yards. Um, Based on your preseason expectations and expectations coming out of last year, how has he specifically performed compared to what was expected of him?
Yeah, I think he's had a really big bounce back. He started last year off really struggling, throwing interceptions, cut down on that a ton this year. Like you said,
Yeah,
only
4.
four picks. Really, he's been able to take care of the ball, and I think his dual threat ability has been so good. He's got really good arm talent. There's been times I think where the offensive line maybe, hasn't given him the time going up against really good D lines like against Texas Tech and Missouri. I think those were the games where the offense really wasn't able to show much, and that's just because the O line didn't give Jalen time to make plays happen. Because what I think he does a really good job at is extending plays and making plays when maybe there's not a play to be made. But when he can't get time and he's sacked, I think it was maybe 9 times against Texas Tech. It was something like that. He's just not able to do much in those situations. So a really tough test against Utah's front, even though they're missing their best pass rusher.
Yeah, Texas Tech is really good at getting those sacks. Bailey, one of their defensive linemen, he's number one in the nation, I believe,
Hmm.
right now in sacks. But he has a lot of similarities, I think, to Devin Dampierre, with a lot of his strength come from mobility and extending that
Definitely.
play. It seems like he rushes. You tell me a little bit less than what he was doing last year. 370 yards is a lot, but
Hmm.
not as much as what I was expecting from Jalen Daniels. Is he working more with the pass? Is the receiving working better this year, or is it about how things were last year?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. It's definitely been a little less. I think there's been less designed quarterback runs. They've ran a little bit less of the option game than maybe they have in the past. But what they what offensive coordinator Jim Zabrowski's done a good job at is really well timed quarterback draws, like in a third and long situation or whatever, having Daniels use his legs to get into a manageable fourth down or something like that. But I think there has been the capability, and he's a great scrambler and always has the ability to break off a big run when he does take the chance to.
All right. You talked a little bit about your offensive line. seems like maybe they've struggled and maybe not allowed Jalen Daniels to just be able to do his thing. Utah's had a very good defensive line this year. They've been winning the trenches.
Mhm.
Now, unfortunately for Utah, they've lost their top edge rusher, John Henry Daly. He's actually out for the season now, and he is second in the nation in sacks, tied for second. But with that being said, how do you expect Kansas offensive line uh, to do this week?
Yeah, it'll be a tough challenge. Like I kind of mentioned earlier, they've struggled when facing some of the more physical fronts that they've played this year. I think what Kansas can do to kind of mitigate that is get the run game working early, be able to set up the play action pass, and also use a little RPO quick hitters. They had a couple of them that were pretty successful against Iowa State to just get their playmakers out in space, like Emmanuel Henderson, Cam Pickett, let those guys make plays after the catch, and kind of keep Utah's pass rush from being able to get to Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's gonna be the key. I think is keeping Daniels, keeping that run game going.
Hmm.
Really, if you watch the Kansas State game at all, um, they ran a lot, and Avery Johnson, kind of similar to Jalen Daniels as well. He's a guy that has a leg threat, but I don't think he's been quite as prolific in that passing game. Like they said, 21 touchdowns for
Hmm.
Jalen is huge. So other than Jalen, who are the Jayhawks offensive impact players that Utah fans should know that name at this point?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, Emmanuel Henderson has been the big play type of guy. I think defenses have done a good job of taking that away from him just because, they know how talented he is and how big of a playmaker he can be. I think a guy that, KU's gone a lot to is tight end Bowden Gruen. He kind of always seems to get schemed up into space. He's open a lot. He's got 5 touchdown catches on the year. He's kind of been, JD's safety blanket when he needs a quick hitter or something like that. And then I think the two running backs will be really important in this game. Daniel Highshaw, Le'Shawn Williams, both of them have been pretty successful this year, but I think it'll take a big performance on the ground to keep Kansas in this game.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a pretty split backfield for the Jayhawks with
Mhm.
Hishaw and Williams. They're pretty similar in yards. I have Williams at 456 yards, Hishaw Jr. at 480. Um, do you have one of those guys who you'd say is more of your workhorse guy? One of them's more of a around the edge, big breakout guy, or are they pretty similar as a pretty split backfield?
Yeah, I think they're pretty similar play styles. Both of them, I think, are super physical runners. They're able to get downhill, break tackles, things like that. I think Williams probably gives them a little bit more of a speed candidate. He's broken a couple more of those long type of runs. He had a couple long runs against West Virginia earlier in the season. But honestly, I mean, both of them complement each other really well. Can wear down a defense with just how physical they are.
All right, talk a little bit more about Grown. He's your tight end. I think he's like what is he 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds, I think is what I saw. Big guy. He's been very prolific in the passing game, 450 yards receiving.
Mhm.
Um, tell us a little bit more about him.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of a guy who's taken on a bigger role than I think a lot of people expected. Obviously, Kansas lost to Sean Hanika, who was going to be their starting tight end going into the year. Lost him earlier in the season to a season-ending injury. And Grown was brought in late in the transfer portal cycle from Rice, kind of just brought in to shore up some depth, but has really, been thrust into this role and really succeeded in it. I mean, kind of a guy, he's a great red zone threat, and teams just kind of seem to lose him when Kansas goes to their play action. He always seems the guy to find the soft spot in the zone and really be there for. I mean, he's had a ton of catches, been really successful for the Jayhawks.
Would you say he's kind of more of the scramble drill guy or more of a quick pass guy?
I think there's been a little bit of both. He's often like a first read on a third down, almost like a third and short type of play. And then when it gets into more of the play action, they're able to set up. He's able to beat a seam or kind of just sit down in the middle and find open space, I think is what he does a really good job at.
How is he as a blocker? Because that's a
Yeah,
big part of tight ends that I think a lot of people it goes unrecognized is how much influence they have working with the offensive line. How's he do there?
I think he's been pretty decent. Kansas has better blocking tight ends. Like Leighton Cure is probably their prototypical like good blocking tight end that they would go to and in a really important run scheme. They've also Kansas has used more jumbo sets recently, working in Nolan Gorska as an extra offensive lineman, and I think that's really helped the run game get going a little bit because there were times earlier this season where that was a little bit of an inconsistent area, and Kansas is kind of shorn that up a little bit with the extra offensive lineman.
Yeah, and Kansas offense hasn't been bad, neither passing nor rushing. Um, but if you had to pick, which one of those two is the stronger suit for Kansas?
I think when it's at its best, it's the pass game, just letting JD make plays, and I think they're a little bit more explosive in the pass game than they are in the run game. But I mean, overall, explosive plays have kind of been an area where Kansas hasn't been great in this year. That and like third downs are probably the two biggest hiccups for this team right now. But I would say the passing game gets them a little bit more of that explosivity. But I think the run game, honestly, in this game against Utah will be more important just because I mean Coach Leipold talked about how they saw how K State was able to run against Utah and that being an area that they want to replicate on Friday.
All right. Now, offensively versus defensively, seems to me like Kansas offense has been effective. But from your point of view, what's been the stronger and the weaker side of things between the offense and defense?
Yeah, the offense I feel like has definitely been the stronger side of the ball. The defense oftentimes has really just allowed teams to just drive down the field on them. I think they've struggled a lot in their run fits against teams who can really run the ball, and then they haven't played super confidently in coverage, something that the coaches have been candid about this season. They haven't been super confident in pass coverage. They play with a lot of cushion, allow teams to have a lot of short completions. So it's honestly it's really been an area of struggle. There's been I think one game, and that was against Arizona, a game that they eventually lost. That KU really looked like a complementary unit on defense, but other than that, they've really been struggling searching for answers on how to defend people.
That does sound a little unfavorable for Kansas with Utah's strength has obviously been running and
Hmm.
the passing. There have been some big passes, but for the large majority of them have been short to medium passes. 5 to 10 yards. But a lot of those guys can get some good yak. So talk about the
Hmm.
yak. How do you feel like Kansas has done tackling wise? Is there a lot of missed tackles going on back there, or is it weak coverage? But once they make that contact, the runner's down.
Yeah, early in the season, missed tackles was definitely like a big talking point, especially in the game against Missouri. They were able to get a lot of yards after the catch. I think it's improved as the season's gone along. You still see it every now and again. I mean, guys miss tackles all the time. It's kind of just what happens in football. I
Yeah,
think it's been better. I think the biggest thing is again just they've been bad in run fits and kind of have allowed runners to get to the second level. And by that point, they're breaking off like 10 plus runs. It seems like
yeah.
more often than they should be.
So it seems to me like Kansas loses kind of a lot of battles in the trenches. How's Kansas defensive line, especially this week? They're going up against Utah's offensive line, which has made a lot of noise on the national scale this year. They've done really well, especially in the rush block. How are you expecting your defensive line to perform this week?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's another really big test. I think, looking at this game from an emotional standpoint, coming on senior day, three of Kansas's defensive tackles and Tommy Dunn, DJ Withers, Keenan Caldwell, those guys have been at KU 5 plus years, all of them. So
Oh
I
yeah,
think from a personal, chip on the shoulder type of standpoint, I think they're gonna have a lot of motivation coming into this game. I mean, it'll be a really big, tough test, physical up front. I think Kansas's edge rushers have done a pretty good job getting after the quarterback. They've also dropped into coverage a little bit under DK McDonald. They've ran some five down fronts that have been a little bit, hit or miss. But they've got some athletic guys on the edge that can hopefully get after the quarterback. But I mean, Dampier's a guy who can extend plays. So I think, winning the battle up front on both sides of the ball is really going to decide this game.
Yeah, and not just Dampier. Over the last several weeks, Utah's quarterback situations become kind of a bit of a one-two punch with Bert Ficklin. Utah's true freshman quarterback. He's the backup QB2, but he's been playing quite a bit, especially with Dampier's kind of been on and off with being a little banged up.
Hmm.
He's got a lower body injury that um, seems to get better, and then have a small setback every couple weeks. But if they can keep the quarterbacks contained, that'll make a huge difference for Kansas. But now, with what you know about Kansas, with what you know about Utah, think if you were a coach for Kansas, your game planning, um, what, how do you expect Kansas to come out this week? First offensively and then defensively.
Yeah, I think offensively, the biggest thing you can do is keep Utah's offense off the field. So you want to be able to sustain drives, really get the run game going, and then, try and open up the play action pass game, and go on 7-minute drives. Not settle for you don't want to settle for field goals. You got to score touchdowns because I mean this Utah team has put up 45 points or more in their last 4 games. I mean have only been held under 30 points once. So on offense, you're going to have to score the ball. And then defense, you got to do really whatever you can. I think Kansas has been successful when they've been able to sell out on a play and that play happens, right? So they sell out on a run and they get a run. They've been able to stop it. They've been able to stop the run pretty well on first down. I think that'll be a big key to the game on defense.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then when you get into passing situations, I think getting to the quarterback is going to be super huge because you let pass play if you let pass plays develop against this defense, you've been able to find completions. So I feel like those are some of the biggest keys on both sides of the ball.
Okay, yeah, those are some good points. So now think of if you were Utah. With what you know about Kansas and where their weak points are, what's the way Utah needs to come out if they want to win this game, especially dominantly? And
Hmm.
they're they're in the Utah is in the college football playoff rankings, but
Right.
just outside, and there's a small chance of an at-large bid. But to do that, they need some style points. So with that in mind, how does Utah need to attack Kansas?
Yeah, I think getting out to a quick start. Um, Iowa State last week, they were up 14-0 pretty much in the blink of an eye, and it was really hard for Kansas to get back in the game outside after that happened. So I think getting out to a quick start, I think I mean, either quarterback as a runner because KU has kind of had their struggles defending mobile quarterbacks. And then, really just letting your defensive line pin their ears back, get after the quarterback because when Daniels has been pressured, it's been a lot harder on him and a lot harder on the entire offense to kind of get going. So if they're able to really succeed in those areas, I mean, I think they could come away with a blowout win.
Yeah, Utah's been very successful offensively in the rushing game. Um, Overall, how has Kansas been at defending specifically the rush? We talked a little bit about it.
Hmm.
You said when they sell out on that rush play. Um, but what are your expectations for this week on how well they can stop Utah's rush?
Yeah, I think it'll be tough. I mean, again, kind of with what I've talked about against a team that can really run the ball well, physical up front, and then just have running backs and quarterbacks that are able to be successful. It'll be a tough challenge. Kansas, I think, has to sell out against the run on most plays. I feel like because they know that's what Utah wants to do, and they know that statistically that should be an area that Utah's really focusing at. So I think, I mean, if they can sell out and maybe stop at some, it'll be good. But overall, I think it's a really tough challenge just because Kansas hasn't been consistent really in that area. Teams have broken off a lot of explosive runs and have been able to get in the second level. And with an offensive line as good as Utah's, I think they may be able to get to that second level a lot on Friday.
With all that being said, Kansas, like I said before, I don't know if you agree with me, they are a team that has chaos potential.
Hmm.
If they cause that chaos this week, what was it that they did? that caused that chaos and led to a Kansas victory this week?
Yeah, I think they've got to force some turnovers. It's been an area that they haven't been great at this year. But in a game like this, when you need an upset, you've got to win the turnover battle. And then I think also on the flip side of how Utah could get a comfortable win, if Kansas wants to win this game, they're going to have to take an early lead. Kansas has fallen behind early in a lot of their losses and kind of just everything snowballed from there. But if Kansas is able to come out with a lead, they're able to sustain it for a little bit. Let's say they're leading, say they're leading at halftime, that's when they really can start to believe and say, "Oh, we have a chance to win this game." And then down the stretch, maybe the flip side of what they've done this year is actually, make the plays able to win a close game. And I think that's going to be what it takes. They've got to take an early lead, start to believe in themselves, and like you've said, they've done this in the past where kind of they win a game that maybe someone doesn't expect them to. And I think this could be a game like that on Friday, but we'll have to see.
You brought up taking that lead in the half. I don't remember what the lead was with Kansas State versus Utah, but Kansas State went into halftime with that lead in a very good first half. But Utah proved then that they're a team that will fight all four quarters.
Hmm.
Um, and defied the odds. They had less than 10%, probability to win at one point in that fourth quarter, but they did. And that was an exciting thing for Utah fans to watch. But I do think Kansas is a dangerous team. Kind of feels like a trap game,
Hmm.
especially with it being Kansas, the team of chaos. But last home game, they're fighting for bowl eligibility, senior game. There's a lot of things that could go this week. And on that note, we have a spread that favors Utah. It's floating between minus 11.5 and minus 12.5 in favor of Utah and over under about 60.5. Do you have any predictions you'd like to give with the score or against the spread bets? Do you like to give us?
Yeah, sure. I think it's tough because I either think Utah will win in a blowout or Kansas will somehow, come away with an upset type of win. So a spread pick is kind of tough there just because I'm
Yeah.
I'm kind of on two sides of the coin because part of me wants to think, this is a really big culture game for Kansas. It's on their senior day. They've had, a lot of the pieces that have kind of helped build this turnaround are playing in their last game. Like you look at Jalen Daniels, Daniel Highshaw, some of the pieces on the defensive line. Like those guys are playing in their last home game as Jayhawks in a half new renovated stadium. Like it'll be, I don't know how good the crowd will be, but it'll be a special day for those players. So part of me wants to think, they're going to come out with their hair on fire and they're going to find a way to win. But my head kind of says Utah is just a much more talented team. They have the pieces that can make winning a game like this really tough on Kansas. So I do think Utah will come away with a win. Haven't given too much thought at a score yet, but I think this
That's fine.
is this is a really tough game for Kansas, I think.
You talked a little bit about Kansas in rebuild, what they're doing rebuilding. What, how has that rebuild gone so far? Do you think Kansas is at a good place as far as rebuilding goes? As far as progression, not necessarily where they're at now. And what does Kansas need to do next year to be a contender next year in the Big 12?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that Leipold's been able to do at Kansas, I mean, he's raised expectations. He went to two back-to-back bowl games before, last year just missing out on one. And that really seems like the expectation around the program now is that this is going to be a team that competes for a bowl game. And now that necessarily maybe isn't enough, especially after missing last year and being on the verge of missing again this year. So I think, I mean, it comes down to just, how can you elevate the ceiling? How can you, compete for a conference championship, whether that's, hammering down on in-state recruiting that they've done a really good job at this year, or, just being able to hit on more players in the transfer portal. But I think they've done a good job at the first step of a rebuild, getting people to believe, being able to build the expectations. Now the next step is just, how can you build on that and elevate your ceiling even higher?
Jalen Daniels, he's a senior. Do you feel confident you have a a guy already with Kansas who's ready to go and take that position at quarterback, or is that a transfer portal target for Kansas?
I'm interested to see how they go about it. Cole Ballard is a guy. He's their second string right now. He's a guy who has the complete trust of the coaching staff. He's the son of Colts GM Chris Ballard, so obviously a guy who knows a lot of football. He had a touchdown pass last week after Daniels had to sit out a play because he got hurt. But I mean, I think too, I think there's merit to going out into the transfer portal and trying to get a guy that compete with Ballard, just raise the competitive level of the room and see what happens from there. So I'll be intrigued to see how Kansas goes about it.
What other position groups should be a target for Kansas this year in the transfer portal?
Yeah, I think they're losing a lot on the defensive line. I think that'll be a big one. Skill position is skill positions. I mean, they lose their two running backs. That'll be big. Wide receivers, anything that can really help you get playmakers. I think will be a big thing for Kansas, especially with a new quarterback in some form or another.
It's a lot of losses for Kansas. Quarterback, you said three of the starting defensive linemen are seniors this year, and
I mean, all
two
all
top running
four
backs.
right now.
All
Yeah,
four
all
and two
four.
top running backs.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So overall, do you think recruiting is going to be bigger? The players Kansas already has, or does this need to be a big transfer portal for Kansas?
Yeah, I think it'll probably have to be a big transfer portal again. I mean, they brought in a lot of guys last year because that was a similar scenario where they had a bunch of seniors and they went after the transfer portal really hard and was able to field a competitive roster. I think it'll be a similar story this year of needing to find the right guys that fit the culture and everything like that and fit Kansas what Kansas wants to do as a football team. But yeah, I think the portal's gonna have to be really big, and then relying on some of the guys that they have to take steps as well.
All right. Now let's talk a little bit before we end this about the Big 12 at large.
Hmm.
The latest, we're recording this on Tuesday night. Latest college football playoff rankings just came out. Utah's at 13, BYU's at 11, and looks like those are the first two out. Um, BYU having lost only one game this year to Texas Tech. How do you feel about the Big 12's chances at getting two teams into the playoffs this year or more? And to me, it seems being a Utah guy, it seems like even BYU should be in there as long as they don't
Hmm.
lose that last game of the season, regardless of how the championship game goes against Texas Tech. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's tough with where it's at right now because the ACC scenario kind of being super chaotic, and if Miami gets in or one of the teams that wins the conference championship will, maybe be a team ranked lower than one of the Big 12 schools, obviously the Group of 5 team as well. So that really takes two of your spots away. I think if the Big 12 wants to get two teams in, it almost needs Texas Tech to lose the conference championship because then I mean it really strengthens the Big 12 conference champions resume to have that win over Tech, and I think Tech is in a spot where they're safe enough where they could handle taking a loss and still make the college football playoff. It's tough. It'll be interesting to see how the committee handles it, but I mean I would love to see two Big 12 teams in. I would love to see, I mean, three Big 12 teams. You get BYU, Utah, and Tech all in. I think would be really good for the conference. I think all those three teams have proven that they should make the playoff and, be able to compete for a national championship.
Yeah, I think so too. Miami, they've had a couple good wins, but they also lost to Louisville,
Hmm.
and SMU. They lost to SMU. SMU's a little further down the college football playoff rankings, but they lost to two Big 12 teams. Um, but with that being said, you said best bet is for Texas Tech to lose that championship game. It's probably going to be BYU versus Texas Tech in that championship
Hmm.
game. If you could put a number on it, what do you think the chances are that Texas Tech does lose that game? Because I'd have to say pretty low. Texas Tech's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I'd say like 30 to 40%, maybe. I mean, I'd give BYU a puncher's chance, even though I mean that game in Lubbock earlier this year maybe didn't really go their way. But maybe being able to learn from that, make any adjustments, and conference championship. It seems like those games are maybe closer than what a regular season game would be. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. Texas Tech has been super dominant this year. They're a really fun team to watch play.
All right, Sam. Hey, we really appreciate you having you on. Is there anything you want to plug for, the Jayhawk slant or yourself, where people can find you before we end this?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, check us out on JayhawkSlant. Me, John Kirby, Shea Wildeboy for basketball. I feel like we do some pretty good stuff over there. If you want
Okay.
to follow me on Twitter or X, it's at Sam_Winton2. I really appreciate you guys for having me on, taking the time. It's always fun to talk some football. So thank you.
No, it's been great. Pleasure's been all ours. Thank you so much again, Sam, and for the listeners. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more UteNation podcasts and coverage.